Hello everyone, this is Shreya Kotecha and I welcome you all to the Symbiosis Law School Nagpur presents LAWCAST, the Lawyers Podcast. And today, in the second episode, we have with us Ms. Sneha Nagaraj, the co-founder and partner at Frontline Law Partners, Bengaluru. Hello ma'am.
Thank you.
And I welcome you from the entire Symbiosis Law School family at Nagpur.
So privileged to be here.
So my first question is that what inspired you to pursue a career in law and how has your career evolved in these many years?
So I grew up watching a lot of debates. I think back in the late 90s and early 2000s, the debates on TVs were actually very good. You had like a lot of prominent speakers who came and, debated. And there was also debates on the legal landscape, not just political. I think that sort of caught my attention. And I realized that I have a very similar line of thinking. And when it came to choosing a career, I think point blank it was law.
So when did you decide in which class that you want to do law?
I think in high school, around 9th to 10th standard, I was very clear that I wanted to pursue law. But what's funny is that even without understanding what courtroom is or what litigation was, I instinctively knew, or rather, I don't know, maybe too decisive for my own good. I decided that I'm going to be a litigating lawyer. I will go to court and, argue law. So I think it was more about going to the courtroom and arguing.
Debating.
Yes. Without understanding anything. And that's probably how I chose law.
So it's like debating led you to the law field.
Yeah, it was not just debates as such, but I think just the reasoning, the analysis, the mental stimulation. I think from a very young age, I was really drawn to that. So that's how my career in law began.
That was insightful, ma'am. But since you just do not have a career in law, but you are also a co-founder at a prestigious law firm, Frontline Law Partners. So what motivated you to found a law firm?
So my journey began in the year 2011. That's when I graduated. And I started working with a litigating law firm in Bangalore. It's a 100-year-old firm called Sundarswamy and Ramdas. And I think in my very first year of my practice, I had some reported judgments, which back then I thought was a huge milestone. But today, I think it's no big deal. I worked there and I really enjoyed the craft. I enjoy presenting arguments before court, but I also realized that I need to be a well-rounded lawyer. So trial is very important. So I moved to a smaller firm, which sort of gave me an opportunity to do trial practice as well as understand how to build your own firm. And I think while I started my law practice, I was very keen on having my own law firm or independent practice. I think I enjoyed that level of independence. So when I worked at the other firm, I learned as much as I could. And I think in 2015, I started my independent practice. And in 17, I founded a law firm called Frontier Legal. And that's how my journey in terms of law and, law firm began.
After listening to you, I'm so inspired that a female did that, because at my home, when I told my parents that I wanted to do law, my mother's first instinct was ki law is not a safe field for girls. Like most of the parents in Indian society, they feel like that law is not a safe field for girls. So that what can be one advice to all those parents and all those female law aspirants who wants to enter into a career on law?
See, it's true. I will not dispute the fact that it's a male dominated society. But I don't see why women can't pursue law. I think the reason why there is this feeling of it's not a safe space is because law is always perceived by what has been said in terms of, movies and serials. And there's a lot of entertainment impact that is sort of drawn to people to interpret law in a very different way. But I think my advice is if you are very certain, you will come around. I was very clear, I was very certain. And I think in that sense, I've been extremely blessed to have very, very supportive parents. I have to give them full credit.
I hope
Not
the
a wink.
parents listening also get
It's very,
inspired.
very important. I think if you have, this is not a fee. I feel like any career, especially law, if you want to stand on your own, you need a support system.
Yes.
So I think that's, yeah. So I think my advice to parents, or not even advice, but what I would say is that if somebody has that passion, don't let that die. All you need to do is just support. You don't need to do anything else. You just need to be that backbone to give that confidence. And I think that's
That
good
was a
enough.
very good advice, ma'am. So, ma'am, you have been working as a litigator, arbitrator, and a mediator. As I saw on your LinkedIn, I was going through your LinkedIn. So, how do you balance all these roles together?
So the short answer is there is no balance as such. But to address your very specific question in terms of three roles, I don't think these are three different roles. So I think my journey in terms of how arbitration and mediation happened is I started my career as a litigator. And when I looked at the system, when I watched it very closely, I realized you're not going to get everything in this particular system, the way it is designed and structured. And that's when I decided to pursue, arbitration and mediation as well, because I think that that actually made me a well-rounded litigator. Um, Mediation sort of brought in that mind where I knew when to advise the client at what stage they have to settle, what is how to sort of structure strong negotiation skills. I think this is very important because when a client comes to you, um, you're not just dealing with the law, but you're dealing with a lot of human emotions. You're dealing with strategy. You're dealing with many aspects of human psychology, I would say. So it's very, very important to, play these different roles and to know when to sort of switch that gear from litigation to mediation. And arbitration is, of course, an alternate to the dispute resolution litigation itself. But in order to balance these three roles, there is no real balance. I think what we're looking at is how to make that switch at the appropriate time.
Right time, right moment.
Yes.
So, ma'am, as you talked about arbitration and mediation, in our college also there is a cell of it called ADRC, and even our professors tell us that the future of law is arbitration and mediation. So, I want to ask: are there any misconceptions that, like, there are some misconceptions that arbitration, people say that arbitration is the future, but are there any misconceptions related to arbitration or dispute resolution?
So I think I wouldn't call it miscon. Yes, there is a large sense of misconceptions. In fact, there are plenty of misconceptions. But I think what we need to understand is one misconception that I want to first say is before we go into it is that arbitration is private litigation. No, it's not private litigation. It partly
Hmm.
true, but that's not the whole part of what arbitration is. Arbitration is more because you need to be extremely efficient. Unlike courtrooms, there is no slacking period. It has to happen in a very efficient way. Confidentiality is extremely high, and you're not sort of bogged down by a lot of procedures. There are set procedures for arbitration itself, which you need to be well versed with. And for courtroom, you need to know different set of procedures. Some places there is a interlink, but I would say not all places. Um, and my personal opinion is that unless you're a good litigator, you can't adapt to arbitration. Because to me, arbitration is a subsect of litigation and need to be procedurally equipped to be able to handle a good arbitration matter. But as such, can I not be a litigator and only look at a career in arbitration? For me, no, it doesn't look like. There are people who are doing that. But I think for me personally, the whole point of learning the trial practice, being a litigator, actually helped me in my ADR practice. So I
Okay.
would never look at ADR
Separately from
separately from
litigation.
litigation. It's all subsects of litigation. They're all needed. I think if everything sort of comes together, then it sets really well. So that's how I would look
I think you have had a great experience in all these three fields. So, as law student, I would like to ask that what are some good skills that a litigator or an arbitrator or a mediator should have? That one skill that is required.
at it. Look, there are many skills, right? There is no one skill. And my advice to a lot of law students is don't prejudge your skill set at this stage because I'm still developing these skills and you're going to keep developing and improvising these skills throughout your career, right? So don't be too hard on yourself saying that I don't have this, therefore I can't do this, because every skill is developed with time. Obviously hard work, I would call hard work as a skill because it's not natural for you to, do it. It's something that you keep practicing, you practice more, and you sort of get attuned to how you want to work and the way you want to work, and you need to put in those hours. Unfortunately, there is no escape, right? There is no instant gratification in law. Let's be very, very clear. It's not going to happen. In fact, it will never happen because every time you put in all your work, you still don't get results. And I feel like that's the best part about law because as much as it really puts you or gives you that equilibrium where you worked hard without expectation, right?
Yes.
You've done everything you want to expect, but those results are honestly not in your hands. So there's no escape to hard work. And also, another skill set which is very important to me is to learn how to learn. Because the way we learn in law school, you need to evolve how you're learning. And learning is a continuous process. Even today, there are so many discoveries that I make in terms of how I can improve my learning or what I can do. And learning doesn't mean learning the law. So there's a misconstruction that, uh, learning is learning the law only. Learning the law, great, read your precedents, that's important. Nobody's disputing that. But learning how to articulate your thoughts, learning from the other side, learning from the courtroom, learning a client's perspective or what the client wants and how to handle that situation. So at every given point in your career you're learning. There's constant learning, there's constant stimulation, and receiving that is very important. So the concept of let me only learn how to draft, let me learn how to read case laws, let me learn how to apply is perfect in moot court. But when you enter the real industry, that's not how it is. You have to keep learning every small aspect, including learning how do I go and deal with these clerks and get my work done. So that process of learning is a very, very important skill that you need to develop. And I think one more skill that at least that I have been working towards is detachment without indifference. What I mean by that is don't get attached to the client or the files. Know that you need to be detached because if you get emotionally attached to a case or a file, you will lose objectivity, and objectivity is everything. So that detachment is important, but also don't be so detached that you become indifferent towards the file itself or towards the case or the client itself. So really balancing this
Balancing.
aspect of detachment without, um, you know, indifference, I think is a very important skill. And all these skills are something that you can learn. But what's very, very important is to have that observation skill and that constant awareness of what's happening around you, not to be absent minded, not to just be in a place and not be present. So I think being not just physically present, but mentally also being aware of your surroundings and observing keenly is really a skill that also, according to me, can be developed.
I think I'm going to learn a lot after this podcast. So, ma'am, you
Yeah.
talked about learning. So, how has been your law school journey? Like, what were some of the mistakes that you made, and how did you learn from them?
I don't think there's any mistake, right? I mean, I don't think I've ever looked at anything that I've done as a mistake, or maybe I did at a particular point, but I think with
With
time and
time.
with sort of spending so many years in the profession, I've realized that everything that you've done, you have learned something out of it. So I've today, if you ask me, I can't go back and identify mistakes, but I can definitely see where
What
things
did
that
you
I could
learn?
have, in terms of my law school journey, like I said, I was so passionate about
Thank
litigation
you very much.
that I did only litigation internships. And I
Hmm.
was an avid mooter in college. I did a lot of moots because I thought that is your stepping stone for litigation, right? So I think my law school journey was a lot about a chase of becoming a litigator, because of which today, in hindsight, I feel like I didn't explore other areas of law. There's no regret. But I think that decisiveness took me to a point where I didn't love myself or every other opportunity that came my way, for example, masters or exploring something slightly different, um, is something I cut off. And I said, I will not explore because this was so important to me. Today, when I look back, I felt like maybe I should loosen up a little more in law school and, had a bit of fun, because then today, the real world, whether you've mooted, not mooted, whether you have your marks in place, none of that really matters. It's about today how you are performing. I think that's
So I
that's
guess law
that's what it
school
is.
should be about exploring all the
Absolutely. Today, if
opportunities.
any student asks me, I'll say, please explore. I know you love litigation. Maybe you want to do this, but explore, keep exploring. Sometimes 5 years is not enough to explore. But I think today, my advice to a lot of people would be that it's okay, take another 2 years and explore more. It's a marathon. You're going to keep at it, and there's no end to it. So you have time, and I would say, explore and have fun at the same time. Yeah.
So, ma'am, after law school, like when you enter the actual real world, what, how was your experience? Like, were you scared, or what was that experience that law school was different and this real world is also opposite of it?
Absolutely. Law school is a bubble, yeah. I mean, I studied in Christ. It's such a happy bubble. I mean, I didn't know anything beyond cultural fest. And I was a theater person in college. So I did a lot of theater. And the mooting experience and all of that, right? It's a happy bubble that you're living in. And the minute you enter, and you have support group. Let's not forget that you have your friends, you have your peer groups, and especially in SLS here, it's not just a law school, you also have other departments. So there's just so much that's happening in college, right? But I think once you enter the real world, there's a lot of isolation. There's a lot of isolation, and you're fairly lost. Of course, I felt isolated. I felt lost. Even today, at so many states, I'm fairly lost. But I think for me, what worked is perseverance, to not give up, to say that yes, you're going to feel all of these things because you're human at the end of the day.
Everything is going to be all right.
Everything is going to, you have to experience all of this, and it's okay. In any profession, you're going to experience this. I don't think it's only applicable to law, because every college, every education system is a very protected world that we come from, especially private good education systems, right? And the minute you enter profession, you have nobody. You're obviously going to feel isolated. And today, I mean, I think what really worked well for me was I had a great support group outside of law school, in terms of family, in terms of friends, in terms of non-lawyer, acquaintances. That sort of really worked very, very well for me, and also support system within the community itself. Um, yeah, so when I entered the profession, yes, there was all of it, but I think there was a lot of passion, and I was willing to adapt. I was willing to give it time. I was willing to adapt, and I don't think the passion is dead even today.
Because even now, when we hear from our seniors who've passed out, they're like, you're not doing anything in law school. It's just a different world outside.
It's okay. I absolutely think there is no rush. You need to live this life. You will anyway live that life. What is the need to sort of rush into that life? Live this life and then embrace the new change that's going to come up. And I don't see that as a problem at all. Yes, it's intimidating. It's scary
Yes.
because you're stepping into the real world. I'm saying embrace it. You are going to go through it. Just like how you entered your law school on the very first day. You had dreams and expectations, and what am I going to do here? How am I going to adapt? Same feeling you're going to have at every stage in your life, right? And that not just in law school and career. It's going to happen, especially for women. You get married and then you embrace motherhood, and you're going to face changes, and that responsibility only increases with time. And I think the only way to deal with it, forget dealing with it, I think the only way to live through it is to embrace it.
Sure, ma'am. I'll definitely take this advice from you. So, ma'am, what do you think? I ask this question to everyone who's related to arbitration and mediation. What is the future of law when it comes to arbitration and mediation? Like,
Like I said, I don't think I can ever look at arbitration and mediation as
as
outside of
people say that
litigation.
litigation will
No, no,
now
no.
reduce and arbitration mediation is going to
Look, arbitration is a subset of litigation in the sense
increase.
that if there is an arbitration clause, then you arbitrate. If there is no arbitration clause in a contract, then you don't arbitrate, you have to go fight in litigation. It's actually that simple. Mediation is definitely an opportunity. So, mediation is something that creates peace even before the war begins or during the battlefield, when you're at the battlefield. That's what mediation is. So, being equipped with the quality of a mediator or the advocacy in mediation, I think is very, very important for every litigator, and I can't stress enough. Because look, why do you want to fight wars in the battlefield,
When you can.
right? When you see that opportunity where you can bring peace, go for that instead of I'm not saying don't be equipped to fight wars. You need to be equipped fight wars in the battlefield. Very important. But at the same time, you should know when to bring in peace. And driving peace to me is very, very important. So for me, this is a collaboration. Like it's a unit. Litigation, arbitration, mediation is a unit. It all comes in the same space. So I don't, of course, I think ADR is very, very important. If you're only a litigator without these skills, you will manage, but you won't be able to achieve everything in litigation. Sometimes you need to bring in the other skill sets to sort of deliver the so-called, delusionally justice that we have in some cases, right? So to basically get what your client wants, I feel like a skill set of ADR plus litigation is what works.
I got a new perspective.
Thank you.
So, ma'am, coming on to this, you've been to SLS Nagpur for like almost 1.5 days. It's been. How has been your experience?
Fantastic. Honestly, it took me back to my Christ days. And I mean, I love my college, there's no doubt about it. I think Christ, like brilliant hosts, the way they conduct fests. So any competition is top notch. And I think, that's the environment I've grown up in. And when I came here, I got the same feeling. It felt fantastic. Like the host, y'all are great hosts. Everything is so well organized. Um, yeah, it really took me back to my college
Can you
days. And
say
yesterday you
something
had a
about
fest.
students?
No, you guys are amazing. I just saw that you all have cameras everywhere recording, and I felt like I'm slightly getting into a world where
And you have the habit.
yeah, like everything is getting recorded. Who's watching me? But no, great hospitality, great
Thank you so
arrangement,
much.
great hospitality. I loved being. I mean, I really hope to come back.
Thank you so much from our director, sir, also.
Thank you. Thanks.
We would love to have you again at SLS Nagpur. And thank you so much, ma'am, for this podcast.
Thank
And
you so
definitely, I've
much.
got a new perspective today that what you told about litigation, arbitration, and mediation. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.